Hi everyone, this is Clairvoyant, and oh, it's a lot closer than it was showing. Anyway, this is Clairvoyant, and I actually found this book. I thought it would be really fun to kind of talk about. It's my first time ever running into it. I've never seen it in my like 15 years of playing tabletop RPGs, like D&D, and all my years of playing D&D, I've never seen this before, and I'm actually really surprised I've never seen it. But here it is. It is the Middle Earth role-playing book, shortened to MERP, which I found amusing in itself. MERP. See right here. It says right there. MERP, which is a funny sound. But I went through it a little bit, and I thought it would actually be kind of interesting to kind of go through and talk about, because you don't see this kind of thing very often. I've never seen it before this, and so I found it very interesting. Like, of course, in the very beginning, it goes through my handy dandy bookmarks. They're not being very handy dandy, but it goes through like a sample adventure, like how it would work when you're playing it, like any standard D&D book. But I feel like that's always a good thing to have in your books, so that people who've never run something like this before will kind of have a good idea of how to do it. And the next page I found really cool too, because they explain the D10 D100 system, like when you use the 2 percentile D10. It goes off of the percentiles for most things, actually. So the game is pretty much D10 based, which there's a lot of games out there like that, but I just thought it was kind of cool, because your stats can get up to 100. Like, you can roll 100 for your stat, for your strength, or whatever they call strength. I think it's called something else. No, it's strength. Yeah, and then if you have a 100, your bonus is plus 25, which I think that's insane, because I've always just played standard D&D for the most part, that Pathfinder, Spycraft, things like that. I've never really played anything that goes straight off of a percentile stat system. And then there's, of course, the races. They tell you about the races, the dwarves, the half-elves, all the different kinds of elves, hobbits, orcs, the humans even, and then they go through the different kinds of men. I find it fun that they have rural, it's always a fun word, rural men and urban men also listed, which I found interesting. It's a nice little, they've got a lot of race choices, and I could see where a new player might be a little boggled by all the race choices. It's like if you took Pathfinder, handed them the core rulebook, which is like that thick, and then handed them the race book as well, and told them, go ahead, pick anything you want. They would sit there and be absolutely terrified. But instead of classes, they're called profession. So, class. They've got your standard scout, which is a thief, warrior, fighter, ranger, tracker. Bard is known as jack of all trades, and I like that. Mage is known as magician, either or is mage or magician, which is whatever, but I find it a little interesting that in Middle Earth they go ahead and list mage as in like Gandalf the White and such, because wasn't there only 5 of them? If I'm wrong, don't be a jerk. And then animist, which is a cleric, but they named it animist, which is, I found kind of cool. Then they have idea points, which I don't remember that. These experience points are given for ideas and plans that lead to the accomplishment of a goal or a successful event, action, or adventure. So it's basically extra experience points that the game master keeps track of and awards you based off of how much you contribute, which is kind of an idea I've never really seen. Like, there's hero points in some games and so on and so forth, but that's typically for doing epic things or saving a party member when they need it, or, that's how I've seen that kind of thing handed out in my games. Well, not my games, but the games I've played in. And this is just for contributing and coming up with the ideas. Like, say you come up with the whole idea for how to combat something, and that's something that you may not know how to do, or someone comes up with a strategy for what to do and how to do it. And they can get idea points for that. And that honestly just kind of helps people think. So you're not just sitting there at a table rolling dice all day, which I've been in games like that and they suck because people do not role play. And that is just the blight of all D&Ders. Oh, why did I do this? Then our statistics, which is stats. You can get 102 plus for your stats. I'm a thief with a 102 dexterity, which is actually something else I believe in this game. Strength, agility, constitution, intelligence, intuition, presence, and appearance. The appearance table, that's kind of normal. You just roll the percentile, 1 to 100. How attractive are you on a percentage? Which you don't need in a game unless you're going to incorporate things that require that. Then they have the race table. It's actually, you roll to see what race you're going to be. You don't have to, but you can. And then you can roll, the second roll here is applicable only if you get man. It tells you which on the table you rolled, what kind of man you're going to be. And it also has a list of languages, which I can't say all these. They're beyond my primitive knowledge, so. And then they have like special racial modification tables. So they get, hobbits get neg 20 to strength. So maybe you don't want to be a warrior. Or maybe you do. Maybe you want to make it fun. And there's also a profession table that gives you the skill bonuses per level, which you can't see that. Like warriors, +1 general skills, +2 body development, +3 weapon skills. So it just tells you what they kind of get. And the skills are slightly different than what you would see in a standard traditional D&D game, which is pretty cool in itself as well. Let's see. I also found they have an injury table, and they have a stat deterioration table. It makes everything more realistic. They also have a recovery table for what kind of injury you have and how long it'll take. They have a life-giving effect and price table for, just show you. Maybe it'll show. I can't see what I'm doing. But it's pretty cool. I think it brings more realism and it helps you, because Middle-earth is somewhat realistic other than the magic and the rings of power and a lot of other things. But the way life and death is treated in Middle-earth is a lot more realistic than even simply in D&D, which sometimes is a little silly. You get stabbed with a sword and you're fine. Why did I bookmark this to talk about? You get opportunity actions. You can hold action. You can cancel actions. It goes into preparing and casting spells. It's actually a modification for how well you've prepped your spell. You can take preparation rounds. So basically you take your round, and rounds in MERP are 10 seconds. So instead of the standard 6 in D&D. So a turn is longer in MERP than it is in D&D. Which I found pretty cool too. And this is so much fun. I love this. I really would love this in D&D. Fumble and failure tables. So if you fumble and you mess up, this is the table that tells you how bad you mess up. It's so much fun. You can bite and swallow tongue in excitement, and you're stunned for 2 rounds. You're stunned for 20 seconds because you swallowed your tongue. I don't think they literally mean swallow your tongue. If they do, then that's kind of interesting as well, because now you can't talk. You can also... Your poor judgment, +5 hits. If not using a crossbow, you let arrow fly. Lose an ear and take 2 hits per round. You lose an ear, which would look incredibly funny if you were an elf. You can cause a mild stroke and knock yourself out for 12 hours. That's how bad you can fumble in MERP. In MERP, you can fumble so bad that you give yourself a stroke. That's awesome. For someone not playing it currently, I'm sure that actually sucks if you were to get that. But there's also a herbs, poisons, and diseases table, which I thought was cool too, because they don't just say, okay, you find your stuff and use it and they're good. No, it tells you which herb heals what kind of injury, concussion, circulatory repair, burn and exposure relief, bone repair. These herbs, and each one has a different effectiveness for what they're doing. It's just, it goes on. It's 2 pages right here. 2 pages. It's crazy. But I like it at the same time. And for this, it is a spell list and item... Yeah, spell list chart and item and spell level chart. I got a little confused reading that. And it is pretty cool too. Because I don't think mages are the only ones that cast spells. And it goes over curses. And then there's, of course, it's a item chart. There's item charts. Oh, I missed it. There's a magic item chart for magic items. It's the size of the treasure and the composition of the treasure. And then if you get a spell result, that's when you then go to this table. There we go. I bookmarked the wrong side. And I found this cool too. In the middle of the book, hex chart. And a little itty bitty one. And then there's a description of every single race, like dwarves. The dwarves are descendants of the 7 fathers, the original lords crafted from the earth. That's very cool. See, Appendix 1, race descriptions. Very first is dwarf, one of the best races, of course. We all love our dwarves. And not only that, it also goes into elves. Of course, it goes into elves. Wow. But it goes into the subtypes, which again is standard for D&D. Like, you have your elf, you have your, it goes into the drow elf, how different the drow elves are. It goes over sylvan elves, and then hobbits. And it has different kinds of hobbits, which they kind of glaze over in the beginning of The Hobbit, so that might confuse some people. Then it goes over, the men, of course. And there's lots and lots and lots of men. It's raining men. And the last thing I wanted to go over is the basic descriptions of creatures from the Middle Earth realm. They go over them and they talk about the stats they have. They even go into things as simple as animals. They have the Nazgul in here as well. Werewolves, wights. There's also a sample scenario as well, and adventure sites, standard 80s D&D. They have character stats and all sorts of stuff. Apparently the DM is called Rolemaster and MERP, but they in this book nonstop it's MERP this and MERP that. I love the simplification of the title, MERP. It's so much fun. But I thought this would be a fun thing to talk about because it's, honestly, I've never seen it ever. And I've dated quite a few gamers too, so I've seen their game collections. And while they have more than I do, I've never seen it. So it's just fun. And it gives examples for things you can add, even to standard D&D, to 5th Ed, to Pathfinder even a freaking Spycraft if you want. But I love it. I'm in love with this. I want to try and use some of the things from here to make a fun game, or even just shove it in one of my DM's faces and say, hey, read this. It's got some cool stuff in it. Well, let's try to use some of this stuff because some of it's useful. because the random charts are fun. Random